Hi, I'm Donna Ray.
And I'm Al Wadley.
Welcome to our podcast, Feldenkrais for Life.
In each episode, we will discuss ideas and experiences pertaining to the Feldenkrais method.
You're going to learn skills that will move pain to comfort, anxiety to ease, and we'll explore learning and how to spark creativity.
To learn more about Donna, visit her site at donnaray.com.
To find Al Wadley, go to achievingexcellence.com.
Hey, Donna.
Hi, Al. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. It's nice to be with you, and I look forward to our discussion today with our audience.
I do too. So we're going to talk a little bit about learning and habits today.
I think that's a great subject, and it's so vast, actually. Before we launch into the topic of learning, I want to mention that Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais actually lived from 1904 to 1984. So when we're talking about his future thinking and neuroscience, it helps put it into context. And the first training program that he did with a large number of people was in the early 70s in San Francisco. So the Feldenkrais method itself is relatively new, and it's not that well known because there aren't that many people teaching and practicing the method.
You know, I wasn't aware that he'd only done 2 professional trainings, and they were both in the U.S. I do know that he had done advanced trainings, and lots of workshops in other countries, in Europe, and did you do any in Australia?
No, he never got to Australia, but definitely Europe and Britain.
And of course, Israel.
Right.
Yeah.
And he taught a small group of students in Tel Aviv before he did his San Francisco training program with about 75 people.
The group he had in Tel Aviv was about 13 people.
Yeah.
Those were his original students.
That's right. And some are still practicing and some aren't. And some of those students developed their own training programs to carry the torch forward.
Yeah. Me Siegel, big one of them. And Yochanan, he wrote a couple of interesting books, and he did a lot of good work promoting the method. Ruthie Alon developed Bones for Life. What else came out of that group?
Hava Shelhav, and she developed Child Space. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of wonderful teacher trainers that have been practicing and teaching the method for so many years. And then, of course, his next North American training program was in Amherst, Massachusetts in the early 80s.
That's probably one of the most well-known trainings, I think, that people talk about. A lot of our colleagues went through that training. A lot of our current trainers went through that training, became trainers from that. Alan Questel and I think Arlen Zones and a number of people like that.
That's right. And Jerry Carson was instrumental in videotaping that training program, and we use those videotapes even today in our professional training programs. And many of us were trained by watching the whole training program via video with Dr. Feldenkrais. And then, of course, that video training was supplemented by a lot of in-person training as well. Mm-hmm. And now as a educational director and trainer myself, I use that format, the Amherst training format, also with the San Francisco material and videos for the students in addition. We have hybrid trainings now. Originally hybrid using videos of Moshe Feldenkrais and teaching live.
So we had some of that in my training as well. Some video of Moshe and some audio of Moshe, and a lot of live training with some really fantastic trainers.
Yeah, and so training programs they're alive, they're interpersonal, they're educational in so many ways. And that brings us to the topic of learning, is how do people learn when they're in Feldenkrais training programs? One of the ways that people learn is through movement, and we really maximize learning through movement. And we say that you're learning how to learn through movement in our training programs. And we begin with developmental movement. So people actually get to repeat their infancy, even their development as toddlers, and then into all kinds of athletic endeavors.
And that was one of the brilliant insights of Dr. Feldenkrais, was that you can use developmental learning strategically and intentionally to heal ourselves, to improve ourselves, and improve our abilities. And so that's the foundation, really the foundation of the Feldenkrais method, is that type of learning versus the type of learning that you go to for school and academia, that kind of thing, memorizing and taking tests and exams and that kind of thing. So there's no tests and exams in the Feldenkrais training.
That's right. And it's so amazing to see a group of adults, however small, if you have your own classes, workshops with 10 people, 20, 30, sometimes we have 50, 60 people in professional training programs. And everybody in the room has a mat and they're rolling around like babies, becoming more and more sensitive to the nuances of how they're doing what they're doing. And that self-awareness that develops from small, gentle movements is actually kind of miraculous because people feel like they really reinvent themselves.
Yeah, they do. In a sense, it's kind of like going back in time and relearning or repatterning the habits that we developed through our development, or we learned through our development. And when those early patterns change, then everything that was built on top of them also changes. So if we start to go up and develop more complex movements, the foundation of our movement is changed in such a way that those subsequent learnings are easier and more complete.
True. And there's a sense of competency that comes with this kind of learning because it's implicit, it's sensory. You're sensing yourself and enjoying your movements and surprised with what you're able to do as a result of exploring small, gentle movements. They transfer to daily activities. Immediately when you stand up, you know that your posture is different, your breathing is different, your walking is different, and that changes your perception of who you are and what you're capable of doing.
I like the word competence, that you develop a competence. And really what comes out of that competence is confidence to do the things you want to do in life and to pursue your, Feldenkrais said, your avowed and unavowed dreams.
And that's such a confusing thing to say. When I first heard that years and years ago, I was going, what is avowed? What is unavowed? What does that mean? And he went on to explain that oftentimes we don't admit to ourselves what we'd really like to be doing and how we'd like to be doing it. And even the kind of person that we want to be, we don't allow ourselves to say clearly who we are and who we want to become.
It's true. And so we develop that competence and the confidence that comes from that. Then we can really step in and start to fulfill those dreams. We can start to become aware of what they are actually and who we want to be in the world and start to step into that.
Mm-hmm. I'm working with an individual currently, and she graduated from a Feldenkrais training program, and we were having a discussion about what is self-image and what do you believe about yourself, because your self-image is made up of what you believe you can and can't do, and much more than that. But starting with that, I asked her to make a list, brainstorming of all the perceptions she has of herself. Because step one is becoming aware of yourself and what you're thinking, what you believe, and then looking at how you're reinforcing those beliefs, even the ones that you don't believe anymore. You reinforce your own beliefs unless you become aware of what you believe.
That is so true.
Yeah, so let's think of a couple of examples. I've got one example. As a child, I saw my sister and my father drawing. And I thought to myself, they had that talent. And that's not something I can do. I wasn't born with that talent. And then I did the Feldenkrais training, and I learned how Feldenkrais himself practiced with Jacoby, who was an educator, how to draw a lamp. And he talked about what's in the foreground, what's the background, how you use shading, how you don't define the lamp with lines, but instead you use a shading and you fill in the space around the lamp, for example.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh my gosh, well, if he couldn't draw and he learned how to draw, I must be able to do that too. And so I started pursuing art lessons, and now I'm a painter and I love it. And before doing the Feldenkrais training, I had definitely crossed that off my list.
That's really cool. It's really cool. I'd say for myself, my voice is something that the Feldenkrais method has helped me to really own. And for many years, I was very kind of choked off, had a very weak voice and very quiet voice. I was one of the people in the training. Very, very seldom did I speak up or ask a question. And when I did, everybody would be like, "What? I can't hear you. Speak up." And be like, "Oh my God." It was like the worst thing ever. But through the training and through all the work I did and my desire to embody my voice and to have a really nice voice, to know the voice that I really could have, that's what I got. And I still work with that today to improve the quality, improve my speech, my enunciation, and use of language. All those things are really important to me. And I knew I had that potential, but I wasn't able to access it. And so through the Feldenkrais training, through the Feldenkrais work, I've been able to do that. And now I really like my voice.
I'm so glad to hear that. I really like your voice too. It's soothing, it's warm, it's heartfelt, and you're easy to understand when you speak. So what a great thing to have owned.
Absolutely. Gone from a kid with a speech impediment who barely talked to a fairly articulate older dude.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So we encourage listeners, all of you, to actually practice the lessons that we have on our websites. We have recorded lessons. You can go to donnaray.com and find some of my recordings. And you can also go to Al's website. He has a huge variety there for you.
I would also say, we talked a lot about training and going through the training and how transformational that is. You don't have to take a training in order to embody your dreams and to become the person you want to be. There's so much work that you can do on your own. There's classes, there's workshops, and now there's so many things available by Zoom and things you can download and work with. So that work can really become a part of your daily practice to improve your health, to improve yourself, and to accomplish the things you want to do in life. So it doesn't have to be a full-on training. There's lots of things that you can do for yourself to really get the benefits that Donna and I are talking about.
Yeah, and you can do that with daily practice, listening to recorded lessons. You can join us in our Zoom classes. We both have weekly Zoom classes. There are lots of opportunities for learning. And when this COVID time is over, we'll have in-person workshops as well.
Yay. Can't wait for that.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that, just like you.
I'm liking the teaching on Zoom, and I really love teaching in person.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also great, because on a cold, snowy day like today, people can just get up, get out of bed, log in, do their lesson, stay warm, stay safe, and that's awesome.
It is awesome. I have evening classes too, and people are in their home and they roll over and get up and they can go about their business in the evening in their homes, feeling cozy and comfortable. And there's a huge advantage to that kind of learning. And the learning's taking place. You're learning, like we said, rolling over, sitting up, learning how to move like a baby in the most comfortable ways, finding pleasure and comfort in your movement. And that immediately transfers to how you roll over and sit up in the morning when you get out of bed.
That's right. So there's a lot of advantages being able to do that at home. And when we can return to group classes, in-person group classes, there's a lot of advantage to that too. There's a really beautiful social aspect to group lessons that I really like, which is walking into my class and I see the people and they're talking and they're sharing. And then there's a kind of an unconscious relationship in the room while people are doing the lesson. They're picking up on things and learning from each other as we go through the process of the lesson. And there's this beautiful kind of balance, co-learning, almost kind of like a homogenization throughout the group as people become more uniform in what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a beautiful, social aspect after the lesson as well.
Mm-hmm.
People talking and laughing and going for walks afterwards.
Well, funnily enough, I'm starting to see that in my Zoom classrooms. I allow time after the lesson for people to share their experience, to ask questions. And just the other day, someone said, I'm learning so much from listening to the rest of you and your experiences, things that I would not have considered on my own. And I even see when I'm looking at people on the screen that their movements become more and more similar. And that's one aspect of the Feldenkrais method, is that there is an organic kind of learning. And when people become more organized in their movements, they actually look more and more similar, even though they're finding their own way. It sounds contradictory, but it's not really contradictory because human beings have certain efficient movement strategies. And when they're supported by the guidance of a Feldenkrais practitioner, they discover what really works. And the faulty ways of learning and old habits just fall away. There's no effort involved in that because they find what is, again, I'm using the word efficient, but when you know something is efficient, it just feels good because everything is moving harmoniously and in an integrated way.
Yeah, we're all human beings. We all have we'll have the same kind of skeletal structure, same kind of nervous system, same kind of brain. There's uniqueness, of course, to each one of us. But as we shed away a lot of the learned habits that interfere with our abilities, then we do become more similar and in a really beautiful way, in the way we move, stand, sit, talk. You mentioned about after your class, people talking, and I've noticed a nice change in my Zoom class afterwards. Now, I've always done discussions after a class in live situations. And at first on the Zoom classes, people were like not really willing to get on and talk very much. But, after class last time, we had like a 15-minute discussion. It was beautiful. People were sharing their experiences and asking really great questions and sort of really nice discussion afterwards. And I love that because that is a really nice way to bring in more ideas about the Feldenkrais method. And so people can really get some of the background and the fundamental ideas and organizing principles that we use. And that's really satisfying to people to learn about those things as well.
Mm-hmm. One neuroscience concept that I learned this little statement from Dan Siegel, the founder of interpersonal neurobiology. He's quite extraordinary to listen to and learn from, is that when you create a new state over and over again, and you cultivate that state, it becomes a trait. So that's kind of profound. That's a certain kind of learning that sometimes we do not consider. And a new state can actually become a new trait. So sometimes people say, oh, I'm just an agitated person. I'm so impatient. That's the way that I've always been. That's who I am. And they're making a statement about their self-image when they say such a thing. And then after a Feldenkrais lesson, they feel calm, patient. They go a little bit slower. They feel open, available to learning and listening. That's a new state for them. And as they continue to practice the Feldenkrais method, they learn how to self-regulate. And that becomes a trait for them because they look for it and they cultivate it. And profoundly, their self-image changes.
Nice. Yeah. So the example you're giving, just kind of to reiterate that. So the trait this person you're talking about is agitation. They identify as an agitated kind of person. And they have a number of examples of developing calmness. And then after a number of experiences like that, they begin to take that on as an identity or as a trait. Go, well, now I'm actually a calm person. I used to be agitated. Now I'm a calm person. And that's a really cool thing.
And that's a gigantic change, isn't it?
It is. And I could give an example of my own, and I would totally attribute this to the Feldenkrais method. I would say I used to be a shy person and have social anxiety. I have no shyness and no social anxiety.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So that's a dramatic shift in your self-image.
It is indeed quite large.
Mm-hmm.
Quite large.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I think that this has been a great discussion, and I'm wondering if we want to wrap it up now.
We probably should wrap it up.
If you have any questions, please go to our website, Feldenkrais for Life, and you can send those questions to us, and we'll address them during our podcasts. Again, you can find Al at Achieving Excellence and me at donnaray.com.
Well, we look forward to you listening to us again next time.
We sure do. Until then,
Okay.
Bye now.
Bye.
If you'd like to follow up with a question, send an email to info@feldenkraisforlife.com. We would love to hear from you.
You can learn more about us on our websites.
You can find Al at achievingexcellence.com.
You can visit my site to join my classes and reach out to me for private lessons online or in my Longmont studio. You'll find my store, the Feldenkrais store, there as well. We can purchase books, audio products, and videos. Donna's website is donnaray.com.
And if you visit my website, you'll find that I'm offering individual sessions, group classes in the Feldenkrais method, mentoring groups, professional Feldenkrais training program information, and recorded lessons.
Thank you again so much for joining us. I look forward to you hearing us next week.
Bye now.
Bye.